I first thought it was a joke when I first heard this, but no, the federal court last week really did halt one of our biggest new gas projects that's far out at sea because, get this, because Aborigines might be buried under the water. Oh, and the Dreaming apparently hates gas projects. Who knew? Now, Santos, the gas company, was just hours from laying a pipe from its Barossa gas field, 140 kilometres from the Tiwi Islands, to Darwin, when Justice Natalie Charlesworth told it to stop. And that's because the Tiwi Island traditional owner, Simon Munkara, said he had new evidence that laying the pipe on the seabed would actually hurt his culture. Here's Munkara's central claim. People lived on that land under the sea, and there are burial grounds and other important things from our ancestors there, even though it's been a long time. And it's under the water. It was always our heritage. We tell our stories and our history orally through our songlines. Some lines go all the way from the land to the sea. Yeah, right. In fact, Santos had already been forced to check for underwater cultural heritage sites along the route, and to no one's surprise that I know, apart from Mr. Munkara apparently, found absolutely none. An anthropologist also said there were none. But Munkara said he had got a new report that claimed the opposite, and the judge ordered Santos to stop work until it had considered this evidence and got a fresh approval. Joining me is Gary Johns, a former Federal Labor Minister, former head of the No campaign, one of them, against the Voice, and author of The Burden of Culture, How to Dismantle the Aboriginal Industry and Give Hope to Its Victims. Gary Johns, thank you so much for your time. This seems mad. I mean, even if you assume the literally incredible, this pipeline was disturbing previously unknown grave sites undersea, and even if the Dreaming did have something to say about gas projects, my question is, so what?
Well, I find it strange that this is called fresh evidence, and it'll be heard in court next week, okay? This started in March of 2018, so the authority gave Santos the right to go ahead in March 2018. Now, I don't mind that a person has their day in court, but this is getting ridiculous. These are many days in many courts. We really need some rules here that enable all the evidence to be put on the table at the earliest possible moment, so that a company and the shareholders have some certainty about these massive gas and oil drillings, which I might say pay for much of our taxation. They are really important to Australia's future, and yet they bleed to death, court case after court case. So I'm not going to the question of the merits of this particular claim, but this business of stretching it out over 5.5 years really has to be fixed.
Well, I get that point because, I mean, I looked at the latest census figures and you find the Tiwi Islanders who are fighting this, not all of them are, but these guys, really depend on government handouts. So since 3/4 of them do not work, according to the latest census, they're either out of the workforce or unemployed. So how can they actually say no to the kind of money that goes to the social services they rely on?
Well, we need a cultural shift, don't we, Andrew? I mean, people need to understand that you can't have a first world standard of living without these sorts of projects. I mean, Australia has always relied on its minerals and resources like gas and, in this case, oil. And you can't just stop it. You can have a go in court, but year in, year out, to keep having a crack at these projects to try and bleed them to death so that investors walk away is not fair. And as I understand it, the pipeline that would take the gas into Darwin from the Barossa project is something like 20 kilometres or more offshore Melville Island, one of the Tiwi Islands. It's a long way from the shoreline.
And here's the last thing here on this. Right, so it's a pagan superstition, the Dreaming, right? An Aboriginal religion, dreaming, no, you can't do it. I didn't know the Dreaming actually had anything to say about gas, but there you go. But given that 81% of Tiwi Islanders are actually Christians, should the courts be treating Dreaming superstitions with such awe? I mean, no other religion gets this kind of treatment.
Well, other religions do get treatment. What we have to do is look at it on its merit, or the court has to look at it on its merits, but I suspect that we're dealing with a pipeline that's so far off Melville Island that it couldn't possibly be relevant to those particular dreamings. That's what we hope the court will decide, but of course it's a matter for them. Yes.
Oh, well, look, the whole thing is nuts. No wonder. Gary Johns, thank you so much for your time. I'm lost for words.